premise that we're all created equal is the opening line in the American story. And while we don't promise equal outcomes, we've strived to deliver equal opportunity. The idea that success doesn't depend on being born into wealth or privilege, it depends on effort and merit.
That president earlier today giving what some have called his best economic speech of his presidency, sharing his economic vision for the nation that wealth and income inequality isn't good for America. And for more on the specific policies the president was laying out, Andrew rejoins us, and he articulated what we've heard, especially since the crash of '08, many times, maybe in a more artful way than we saw in Zuccotti Park and some other places, but nonetheless, he said, you can't have the have and have not divide this wide without it being really dangerous.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of the rationale behind that, Rich, but the president did link two policies to that wealth and income gap problem today: healthcare reform, as you might expect, and the minimum wage. Raising the wage is the goal of these recent Black Friday protests, and there's another set of big city fast food strikes on the calendar for tomorrow. Current federal minimum wage is still just $7.25 an hour. As for wage inequality like climate change, you can debate the cause, but it's hard to debate that it is happening. On the left of the charts here, snapshot of who makes what in this country, and on the right is how those numbers have changed since 1979. Don't worry about the details. The red is the top 1%. That's the one at the top. For everybody else, you are seeing flat lines or that your number has been falling. Have we ever seen this kind of inequality before? We have. The last time the top 1% in this country made more than they do now, 1928, which led to the Great Recession, or Great Depression, excuse me. And why didn't we see this kind of inequality since? You could argue it was the election of Franklin Roosevelt and the implementation of reforms and protections, as well as tax reform, that helped loosen those inequalities. Rich?
Now, I know you're not crazy about what the president said today, Obie and the rest, but at some point, there's got to be a disincentive for people on the bottom end to get out of line here. And I'm not talking about pitchforks and stakes now, but what do we see if we go back in history? It says you got to go back to 28 here. And if you have the wealth concentration we have right now in the top 1%, we're not talking about the bottom end. We're talking about middle class who are struggling really hard.
But the number one thing people need are jobs. And since this gentleman has been president, since Obama's been president, there's 12 million more people in this country and 1 million fewer jobs. He's done nothing to build the economy and bring people back to get to work. And he talks about minimum wage and different things, but he has nothing. But he has nothing. He has nothing to offer today in the speech. CNN and Fox went away from the speech.
Hold on. Here's the problem with your argument. Take Obama out and put in a Republican president. Looks at the taxation rate here for the top 1%. Compare that to history. The top end of this country pay less taxes than they did, time out, under Reagan, under Eisenhower, under Bush Sr. The tax rate has gone down and down. So if I follow your argument, if we allowed the wealthy to create more jobs, everything would be okay. We've had that for the last 5+ years, and it doesn't work. But trickle-down economics, come on.
But raising taxes is punishing those that go out and work. Those who get education and invest their dollars and invest their years to go make money, and now you want to go out and say, hey, listen, because you've done all that and you're now making more money, we're going to take more in taxes and redistribute wealth. That's what this president is trying to do. He's doing that with health care. I went through health care today trying to sign up online and do this whole thing, and it's not a question of getting online, it's a question of what the costs are.
And now I'm bringing it to you. You're telling me when Andrew's chart laid out the concentration and how things have gone in this country for the 1% versus the bottom, it doesn't bother you?
No, the reason it's like that is because the people below that aren't not in the 1% are not working. There's fewer jobs now for all of that. And that's the case too.
For all the talk of the job creators, there's one job creator who we have been strangling over the last 6 years. That's the federal government. There's 1 million less jobs in the country. There's about 1 million, if not more, fewer government jobs.
But there's 12 million more people. So it's 1 million less with 12 million more people.
You're so concerned about people getting jobs. Why are we cutting off one of the sources of those jobs, which is government jobs?
Because you don't
government
need more
jobs are evil.
Government
Government jobs are
spends too
terrible.
much.
We can't have government jobs.
Government spends too much. You don't need more people working in government.
But
that's
the private sector isn't picking up that slack, and the government has been, in the past, has been an effective tool at
using that
argument,
if you can't get a job, go work in the federal government?
Play this closer to home, okay? New York City's blue, 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 okay? Okay. But Staten Island ain't exactly, bleeding heart Richmond County. Almost half of them voted for de Blasio. De Blasio laid it out really clearly. And it's funny, from some of the people who voted Democrat for the first time, they said, I'm having trouble making my rent. Well, time out, Obi. I'm having trouble making mortgage. I'm having trouble paying the kids' tuition. I'm having trouble X, Y, Z, Q. And they're saying it's getting too hard. It's getting too expensive to live. And look at the jobs that have been cut here. Nobody's hiring. People are cutting back on workforce, not because they're being taxed too high. They're making more money on the corporate level than they ever did. Talk about how this can play out politically, because for all the things we can say about de Blasio, he touched into something. I mean, he got 3/4 of the vote.
Well, de Blasio did tap into a fear that all Americans are facing in terms of the dollars and cents, pocketbook issues. But my friend OB uses code language. What was it? Redistribution. Whenever they say that, Obama's dead in the water. So that's what, and I shouldn't say that about the president of the United States, but his initiative is dead on arrival. The fact of the matter is, you don't need me to tell you. You know this.
But more than 3 in 5 Americans believe with the idea of the minimum wage should go to $10 an hour.
But there's two comments there. First off, the president's approval rating is now hovering near 40%.
Why is that?
Number two,
why is that?
All right, well, let's not get into that.
Number two, Staten Island. Just to clarify what happened there, one of the biggest issues there is tolls. And in that issue with the primaries,
you think their
Joe
biggest
Lhota.
problem is
No.
polls?
I traveled Staten Island with Joe Lhota numerous times. John Cassidy spent a lot of money in Staten Island on the toll issue and the MTA. And additionally, de Blasio mail. The only place in the entire city de Blasio did mail that I'm aware of in the general was Staten Island. That's what he did, and that's what it was about.
It's not supposed to be easy, but it's getting too hard. And it's getting really, really hard for a middle-class family to make it anymore. And the longer this gets ignored and said, you know what, stop your whine and pull yourself up by the bootstraps, it ignores something. There are some who won't get up there, you know what, but there's a lot of people who are trying right now.
But why do raising taxes benefit that? Then the government spends more money?
Because if there's a safety net, right, a safety net, I'm not saying something we cradle, but a safety net, what, you don't think we...
This is the same government that put unemployment in people's pockets continuing and going on, and everybody in the job sector that hires people and the human resource people will tell you if you keep paying people not to work, they have a disincentive to go look for a job.
If you think the safety net is so thick right now that people are being disincentivized to work, there's so many jobs out there, they'd rather stay home, come on. I'll give you the last word, Andrew, before we go to break.
I agree.
Deep thoughts. All right. This one I know we'll have also a debate on illegal licenses. Illinois right now, today started here. People taking tests, you can get a driver's license there and you don't have to be a legal citizen. Is this a practical reality, or are we sending the worst kind of message? We'll be back on that after this.